Sometimes I sit in this old brown armchair, looking out at the sleepy streets of Cedar Falls, Iowa, and I wonder where it all went wrong. My hands are rough from 50 years of work, building houses, laying tile, fixing things nobody else wanted to touch. My wife, God rest her soul, used to say I had a heart too soft for this world. Maybe she was right. It was a chilly December afternoon when it all started. I'd just come back from the grocery store, the same one I'd gone to every Saturday since we moved here. My daughter, Emily, and her husband, Brad, lived with me now, ever since they hit a rough patch. You know how it is, the young ones always seem to find trouble, but a parent's heart can't say no. I walked into the living room, arms aching with heavy bags, only to find Brad sprawled on the couch, my couch, with his dirty boots propped up and a beer sweating in his hand. ESPN was blaring. He didn't even look up. "Hey Frank, get me another beer while you're up," he grunted, as if he was the king of the house. I set the bags down and took a deep breath. "Brad, I just got in. Let me put this stuff away, all right?" He scowled. "Come on, don't make it a thing. Just grab it, man." Before I could answer, Emily appeared in the doorway, her blonde hair pulled up, tired eyes darting between us. "Dad, can you please just help Brad out? He's had a long day." That stung more than I cared to admit. My own daughter, the little girl I used to carry on my shoulders at the Iowa State Fair, now siding with her husband, talking to me like I was the help. But I swallowed it down. I always do. I trudged to the kitchen, put the groceries away in silence, and got Brad his damn beer. When I came back, he snatched it out of my hand without so much as a thank you. It was the same every day. The mortgage? Paid from my account. Groceries? I covered those too. Brad lost his job last year, and Emily was between things. But still, they acted like I owed them every bit of comfort under this roof. That night, as I sat alone at the dining table eating microwave stew, I heard them in the other room, whispers, then arguing. Emily's voice rose, sharp and cold. "If he doesn't start pulling his weight, he's out. I can't take it anymore, Brad." Out. In my own house. I finished my stew in silence, heart pounding like an old clock. I'd built this house with my own two hands. Every nail, every shingle, every floorboard. Emily grew up here. We celebrated birthdays, Christmases, even the little things, lost teeth, scraped knees, her first prom dress. And now I was just a burden. The next morning, I woke to find a note on the counter. "Frank, can you pick up some stuff for dinner? And please remember Brad likes those special steaks." "No. Please. No. Thank you." Just orders. I looked around my kitchen, at the faded photos on the fridge. Emily as a kid, my late wife in her garden, the life I'd built from scratch. I realized, with a cold ache in my chest, that somewhere along the way, my family had forgotten what it meant to be grateful. And that's when I decided something had to change. That afternoon, I took a walk through our neighborhood, letting the cold air sting my cheeks. The world looked different now, all those houses with Christmas wreaths on the doors, the sound of kids throwing snowballs, the distant smell of somebody's firewood burning. I remembered when Emily was young, how we'd build snowmen in the front yard and laugh until our sides hurt. Now, the only sound inside my home was the television, Brad's cursing, and the silence after another argument. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd become invisible in my own house. Brad and Emily lived as if this was all theirs by right, and I was just a shadow passing through the hallways. They never asked about my day, never wondered how my heart was holding up without their mother. No one asked if I was lonely or tired. They just took, and took, and took. Later that evening, Brad stomped through the door, slamming it behind him. "Frank, the heating's busted in the guest room. You need to call someone to fix it." I bit my tongue. The heating wasn't broken. Brad just wanted it warmer for when his buddies came over to watch football and make a mess of my living room. But I nodded and said I'd take care of it. That night, I sat at my desk with a stack of unpaid bills. Mortgage. Utilities. Credit cards. Everything in my name. Emily and Brad had never once offered to pay a cent, not even for their own cell phones. I told myself it was just temporary, that they'd get back on their feet and things would go back to normal. But deep down, I knew better. This was the new normal. Sometime after midnight, I heard muffled voices coming from the hallway. Brad was on the phone, talking in that low, angry tone he used when he thought I couldn't hear. The old man's clueless. He'll do whatever Emily says. Once we get the refinance, we're set. He paused, then added, "We'll make sure he signs the papers. He's too soft to say no." My blood ran cold. Refinance? I never agreed to that. This was my house, the last thing I owned outright. Brad was planning something, and I was just another obstacle to move out of the way. The next morning, I called my old friend Henry. We'd worked together at the lumberyard years ago, back before Henry moved down to Tennessee. "Frank," he said, his voice as warm as ever. "What's going on?" I hesitated, not wanting to sound weak, but eventually the words tumbled out. Henry listened quietly, then sighed. "You've given them everything, Frank. Maybe it's time you start thinking about yourself for once." After I hung up, I stood in the kitchen, staring out at the empty backyard. I could see the spot where Emily broke her arm falling off the swing set, the spot where my wife used to plant tulips every spring. This house was a museum of memories, and now, I was just another relic the younger generation wanted to toss aside. By noon, Emily burst in, tossing her purse on the table. "Did you get the steaks?" she snapped. "Brad's parents are coming over tonight, and he wants everything perfect." I wanted to tell her no, to tell her that I wasn't her servant, that I wasn't going to play host for people who never once thanked me for opening my home. But the words died in my throat. Instead, I nodded and put on my coat. The grocery store was crowded, full of families shopping together, laughing, picking out Christmas cookies. I felt like a ghost wandering through someone else's life. At the checkout, the clerk smiled and wished me a Merry Christmas. I tried to smile back, but my heart wasn't in it. When I got home, Brad was already drinking on the porch, barking orders about how to set the table, how to cook the steaks just the way his father liked. Emily fluttered around nervously, trying to impress people who'd never given her the time of day. As I grilled the steaks in the freezing air, my hands shaking, I wondered how much more of this I could take. After dinner, Brad's parents left without a word of thanks. Emily barely looked at me as she stacked plates in the sink. "You missed a spot," she said, pointing to a grease stain on the stove. Something in me broke. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized the little girl I'd raised was gone. In her place was a woman I hardly recognized, impatient, demanding, cold. I went to bed early, but sleep didn't come. I lay awake, staring at the cracks in the ceiling, listening to the sound of Brad's laughter drifting down the hallway. He was telling a story about the old man, and they all laughed like I was the punchline. My fists clenched under the covers. I didn't deserve this. I'd given up everything for my family, and they repaid me with disrespect. That night, for the first time in my life, I made a decision just for myself. I was done being taken for granted. I was done being invisible. Tomorrow, I would remind them whose house this really was. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. For years, my routine had been to brew coffee, sit at the window, and watch the sky turn from blue to gold. It used to be peaceful, a moment of calm before the day's work began. But that morning, the old comfort felt foreign. I watched the snow falling gently outside, blanketing Cedar Falls in quiet white, and realized I'd reached a crossroads. I moved quietly through the house, careful not to wake Emily or Brad. As I poured my coffee, I glanced at the framed photo on the counter. My wife, her smile bright even after all these years. "What would you do?" I whispered. The house felt emptier than ever. By 8 o'clock, Brad was already up, digging through the refrigerator. "Where's the OJ?" he barked. "We're out again?" Emily wandered in, scrolling her phone. Neither noticed me. I sat down with my coffee and waited for them to finish their routine. When Emily finally looked up, she frowned. "Dad, what's wrong? You look upset." I steadied my voice. "We need to talk," I said. Brad rolled his eyes but sat anyway. "This house, it's not just a place to sleep. It's my home. I worked my whole life for it, and I won't see it disrespected." Emily scoffed. "Dad, don't be so dramatic. We're family." "Are we?" I asked quietly. "Because lately it feels like I'm just a wallet with legs. All the bills, the groceries, the mortgage, I cover it all, and you two act like I'm lucky to have you here." Brad snorted. "We're doing you a favor, Frank. You'd be lost without us." Emily added. "You're not alone. Isn't that what you wanted?" Her tone was icy, almost cruel. "Maybe I would rather be alone," I replied, my words surprising even me. For a moment, the room was silent. Then Brad slammed his mug down. "If you don't like it, Frank, maybe we should just move out. Is that what you want?" I shook my head. "No, I want respect. I want gratitude. I want my family back, the one that cared about each other." But Emily only stared at me, her expression stony. They left the table without another word. I could hear Brad muttering as they stomped down the hallway. The rest of the day passed in silence. No apologies. No attempt to make things right. By afternoon, I'd had enough. I took a walk to clear my head, wandering through the old downtown. The bakery on Main Street still smelled like cinnamon and fresh bread. The barber, Mr. Carter, waved from his shop window. "Merry Christmas, Frank," he called. I smiled and waved back, the weight in my chest easing just a bit. Here, at least, I was still somebody. That night, I sat at my desk with a yellow notepad and began to make a list. Not chores, not bills, but memories. The things that mattered. The backyard cookouts. Teaching Emily how to ride a bike. Building the treehouse that's still there, even after all these years. I realized something as I wrote: these moments were mine. No one could take them away, not even family. But the more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Why should I keep giving and giving while they only took? Why should I let them treat me like a doormat, just because I'm old Grandpa Frank? I made up my mind that night. Tomorrow, I'd go to the bank and look into canceling those automatic payments. No more mortgage for Brad and Emily. No more grocery runs on my dime. If they wanted to live here, they'd have to contribute. And if they didn't like it, well, maybe it was time for a change. The next morning, I left early, before anyone else was awake. I drove to the local branch, the same bank I'd used since I was 23. Mrs. Anderson, the branch manager, recognized me right away. "Frank, how's retirement treating you?" she asked with a genuine smile. I explained my situation. She listened with sympathy. "You're not the first, you know," she said softly. "A lot of folks your age get taken advantage of by family." I nodded, a lump forming in my throat. It didn't take long. We canceled the automatic mortgage payment. She helped me set up new accounts, just in my name. No more Brad, no more Emily. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of relief. Maybe even pride. On my way home, I stopped at the old diner for lunch. I hadn't treated myself in a while. Over a hot turkey sandwich and a slice of apple pie, I realized this was the first real meal I'd bought for myself in months. No demands, no orders, just peace. As I pulled into the driveway, I felt lighter. I knew there would be fallout. Brad and Emily wouldn't be happy. But for the first time since my wife passed, I felt like I was standing up for myself. Inside, the house was quiet. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat at the table, waiting. In that silence, with snow falling gently outside, I promised myself I would not be taken for granted anymore. Tomorrow, everything would change, for all of us. I didn't have to wait long for the storm to hit. By noon the next day, Brad came stomping into the kitchen, waving his phone like a weapon. "Frank, what the hell is this? The mortgage didn't go through. The bank's saying there's no auto payment this month. You messed something up?" I sipped my coffee and looked him square in the eye. "No mistake, Brad. I canceled it. From now on, you two can handle your own bills. I've carried you long enough." For the first time since he moved in, Brad was speechless. His jaw worked up and down, but no sound came out. Emily rushed in behind him, already teary-eyed. "Dad, why would you do that? You know we're not ready." I sighed, feeling years of exhaustion settle on my shoulders. "You've been not ready for over a year, Em. When I needed help around here, a little respect, maybe a thank you, I got nothing. You want to be adults, it's time to act like it." Brad was quick to recover. "You can't just pull the rug out, Frank. We have plans. We were counting on you." He didn't see the irony. For months, all I'd wanted was to feel needed in a way that wasn't just about money. I stood up, steady as I could. "I'm not throwing you out. But I'm not your safety net anymore. You want to live here? You help. Otherwise, you can find your own place. You're both young. You'll figure it out." Brad stormed off, slamming doors. Emily just stared at me, her face crumpling. For a moment, I saw the little girl who used to ask for piggyback rides, who held my hand at the county fair. "Dad, please don't do this. We'll be better, I promise." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But something inside me was different now. "It's not about punishment, Em. It's about respect. For this house, for me, for everything I tried to give you." The rest of that week passed in a haze of awkward silences. Brad avoided me, muttering to Emily behind closed doors. She tried to smooth things over, making dinner or asking about my day, but it all felt forced, like she was hoping I'd change my mind if she played the perfect daughter. I spent my days in the garage, tinkering with an old radio I'd been meaning to fix since summer. The peace was welcome. I started eating lunch at the diner downtown more often, talking with folks I'd known for decades. Nobody there expected anything from me except good company and a story or two. One afternoon, as I was leaving the diner, Henry called from Tennessee. "Frank, how's it going up north?" he asked. I told him what had happened, how I'd finally stood my ground. Henry just laughed, that big, booming laugh of his. "'Bout time, buddy. You raised them right. Now it's their turn to stand on their own feet." That evening, I returned home to find Emily waiting in the living room, clutching a stack of papers. She looked nervous, almost scared. "Dad, I know you're upset. But can we talk?" She handed me the papers. It was a list of bills, credit cards, loan notices, all in her and Brad's names. "We messed up, Dad. We thought we could manage. We thought you'd always be there to bail us out." I sat down and listened as she explained their debts, how Brad had borrowed money from people he shouldn't have, how she was scared they'd lose everything. "I'm sorry, Dad. I really am. I just didn't know how to stop." For the first time in months, I saw a flicker of the daughter I remembered. "It's not too late, Em. But you need to start being honest, with me, with yourself, and with Brad." Brad came in midway through our conversation, arms crossed. He was still defensive, but he looked tired, defeated. "You're right, Frank. I took you for granted. I just didn't know what else to do when things got hard." The three of us sat together in that living room, surrounded by the ghosts of happier times. I told them stories about when their mother and I first bought this place, how we barely scraped by some months. How we never would have survived if we didn't pull together, if we didn't respect what little we had. Something changed that night. For the first time. Brad and Emily listened, really listened. No interruptions, no rolling eyes. They even asked questions, wanted advice. I realized that sometimes, standing your ground is the only way to remind people of what matters. It wasn't a magic fix. Bills still had to be paid. Tension still hung in the air. But the next morning, Brad got up early and went to look for work. Emily made us breakfast, not perfect, but the effort mattered. Slowly, the house began to feel a little less heavy. I spent more time outside, cleaning the yard, fixing up the old shed. Every day I saw signs of life coming back: laughter, small talk, even a shared meal at the kitchen table. One evening, as the sun set over Cedar Falls, Emily joined me on the porch. "Dad, I know it's going to take time, but I'm grateful you didn't give up on us." I squeezed her hand, feeling the weight of years lift just a little. "That's what family's for, Em. But it goes both ways." And as we sat there, watching the fireflies dance in the warm summer night, I let myself hope again. Maybe things could change, if we all learned to be a little more grateful for what we had. The next weeks tested all of us in ways I didn't expect. Brad picked up odd jobs, painting fences, cleaning gutters, even working nights at the hardware store. He grumbled at first, but something about earning his own money must have struck a chord. I'd see him come home dirty, tired, but with a quiet pride in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Emily started looking for part-time work too, and though she was embarrassed to take a cashier's job at the grocery, I told her the same thing I used to say to her as a kid: honest work is never something to be ashamed of. She smiled for the first time in a long while. Of course, there were setbacks. The bills didn't magically disappear. Some creditors called day and night, their voices sharp and unforgiving. A couple of times, I'd catch Emily crying in the hallway. Brad snapped at her once or twice, and she snapped right back, but this time, I didn't get in the middle. They needed to learn how to lean on each other, or they'd never make it as a couple. In the meantime, I rediscovered small pleasures. Mornings on the porch with my coffee, reading the paper front to back. Visits to the town park, where I'd watch the ducks and remember when Emily was a little girl feeding them breadcrumbs. The world outside felt bigger and kinder than the tension I'd let build inside my own four walls. One Friday afternoon, Brad walked in with a stack of paychecks and a grin. "Frank, I paid the electric bill and put gas in the car. There's even enough left for groceries." He looked almost sheepish, waiting for my approval. I clapped him on the shoulder. "That's how you do it, Brad. I'm proud of you." He looked away, embarrassed, but I could tell it meant something to him. Saturday, Emily cooked a real dinner, nothing fancy, just spaghetti and meatballs, but it was the best meal I'd tasted in months. We ate together at the table, laughter slipping in between the talk about work and bills. For the first time in ages, the house felt like a home again. Later that night, as I cleaned up the dishes, Emily came over with 2 mugs of cocoa. "Dad," she said quietly, "I've been thinking. I'm sorry for how we treated you. I just got so used to having help, I forgot what it cost you. I forgot how hard you worked for all this." I set down the dish towel and took her hand. "Everyone forgets sometimes, kiddo. What matters is remembering again before it's too late." She nodded, wiping away a tear. I don't want to lose you. Or this house. Or who we are as a family." "You won't," I said. "But family isn't about who pays the bills. It's about who stands by each other when times get tough." Brad joined us, sitting on the porch steps. "Frank, I know I've been a pain. I'm sorry for the things I said, for treating your house like a hotel. I get it now. I really do." I sipped my cocoa, watching the stars emerge over the rooftops. "You two are young. You'll make mistakes. The trick is not to keep making the same ones. That night, I slept better than I had in a long time. For the first time since my wife passed, I felt like I wasn't alone in this house full of memories. The future was still uncertain, we had a lot of work ahead, but there was hope again. The next morning, the phone rang early. It was Henry from Tennessee, checking in as usual. When I told him how things were turning around, he just laughed. "Told you, Frank. Sometimes you gotta let the kids fall so they learn to get back up." I chuckled, thinking how true that was. After the call, I joined Brad outside to fix the back fence. We worked side by side, sharing stories about our fathers, the kind of wisdom men pass down in quiet moments. Brad listened for once, really listened, and I saw a spark of respect in his eyes. As days passed, things kept moving forward. Emily brought home a promotion notice from work, grinning like she'd won the lottery. Brad came in one night with plans for night school, talking about maybe finishing his degree. It wasn't perfect, but for the first time in a long while, we were pulling in the same direction. One evening, after dinner, I found an old album in the attic. We sat together and flipped through faded photos, birthdays, Christmases, trips to the lake. There was laughter and a few tears, but mostly, there was gratitude for how far we'd come. And as I looked at my daughter and her husband, I realized something I'd forgotten. Sometimes, letting go is the only way to help the people you love stand tall. Life, I learned, doesn't move in straight lines. Even after everything we'd been through, some days were harder than others. There were moments when Emily would slip back into her old habits, snapping over small things or disappearing into her room for hours, phone pressed to her ear. Brad would come home tired and cranky, barely saying a word before heading straight to bed. But each time, we found a way to talk it out. Each time, the arguments didn't last as long. One Sunday, as I swept the porch, a letter arrived in the mail. It was addressed to me, but the handwriting was unfamiliar. Inside was a note from my old friend Roger, who'd moved out to California years ago. He wrote about his own kids, how they drifted away, only calling when they needed something. "Don't let bitterness win, Frank," he wrote. "Sometimes they just need to remember where they came from. Sometimes we all do." That night, I sat with the letter in my lap, thinking about all the years I'd spent working to give Emily everything I never had. A good home, warm meals, a safe place to land. I remembered my own father, a hard man with soft eyes who never said much, but always showed his love by doing. I wondered if I'd been too soft, or not soft enough. One evening, as autumn settled in and the leaves burned gold and red along our street, Emily came home with a small envelope in her hand. She handed it to me, cheeks flushed with excitement. "Dad, I got a raise at work. I want to help with the bills. And," she hesitated, her voice shaking just a little, "I want to start saving. Someday, I want to have a place like this of my own. I want to build something real, just like you did." Pride and relief washed over me. I hugged her, rough and awkward but true. "You're already building it, Em. Every day you try again, you're building it." Brad started helping around the house more. He painted the fence, repaired loose steps, even fixed the leaky faucet in the kitchen without being asked. One afternoon, I caught him sitting on the porch with a cup of coffee, staring out at the yard the way I used to do. "Never realized how much work goes into keeping a house together," he said quietly. I nodded. "Most people don't. But you do now." Things weren't perfect. We still had money troubles. The bank called a few times about late payments, and I had to sit down with Brad and Emily to sort out a budget. It was humbling for all of us. But nobody yelled. Nobody blamed. We worked it out, line by line, dollar by dollar. Thanksgiving came around, and Emily insisted on cooking dinner herself. It wasn't like the feasts her mother used to make. The turkey was a little dry, and the pie crust burned on the edges, but it was ours. Brad set the table, I carved the turkey, and for the first time in years, We went around and said what we were grateful for. Emily looked at me, eyes bright. I'm thankful for second chances. For this house. For my dad. Brad raised his glass, echoing the words. And for finally understanding what it means to earn your keep. I swallowed the lump in my throat and said, I'm thankful for both of you. For this roof. For every morning we wake up and try again. As the months rolled on, small things started to change. The mailbox wasn't stuffed with overdue notices anymore. The house felt lighter, the air warmer. Even the old neighborhood seemed to notice. Neighbors would wave when they saw Brad mowing the lawn or Emily sweeping the front steps. We got invited to a potluck for the first time in years. One evening, as snow began to fall, Emily and Brad came home with a little Christmas tree, dragging it inside with red faces and frozen fingers. We decorated together, untangling old lights, laughing at the ugly handmade ornaments from Emily's childhood. The living room glowed gold and green, full of memories and the promise of new ones. Later that night, as I sat by the fire with a cup of cocoa, Emily leaned against my shoulder and whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on us, Dad. Thank you for reminding us what matters." I smiled, my heart as full as it had been in years. "That's what grandpas are for, sweetheart. To remind you that no matter how far you wander, you can always find your way home." That Christmas was different from any other. There was no expensive feast, no pile of gifts under the tree. Instead, we had simple food, handmade cards, and the kind of laughter that had been missing for a long time. We sat together in the living room, watching old movies, sharing stories, and remembering the woman we all missed. As midnight approached, Emily handed me a small wrapped box. "Open it, Dad." Inside was a picture frame, a new family photo, Brad and Emily standing beside me on the porch, all of us smiling, the house in the background. I felt my throat tighten. "It's not much, but," she began. "It's everything," I said, holding back tears. "Thank you." The next morning, I woke early and went for a walk through Cedar Falls. Snow dusted the rooftops, smoke curled from chimneys, and somewhere nearby, children's laughter echoed through the frosty air. I realized I was no longer haunted by the past, no longer burdened by regret. I'd found peace, not because life was perfect, but because we'd chosen, day after day, to try again as a family. Brad found a steady job at the lumber yard. He came home tired but proud, every night. Emily saved enough to start taking classes at the community college. Our house was still modest, but it was full of hope. We shared chores, planned meals together, and even managed to set a little money aside for the future. On New Year's Eve, we invited a few neighbors over for coffee and pie. I watched Emily laugh with her friends, Brad telling stories about work, and I realized that this house, my house, was alive again. Not because of the bricks or the memories alone, but because love and gratitude had come back to fill its empty spaces. A few weeks later, Henry called to check in. "How's the family, Frank?" he asked. I chuckled. "Better than ever, old friend. It took a while, but I think we finally figured out what matters." He laughed. "Told you so. Sometimes you have to draw a line in the sand so people remember which side they want to stand on." Spring arrived, and with it, new beginnings. Emily planted tulips in the backyard just like her mother used to do. Brad helped me repaint the porch swing, and we spent quiet evenings watching the sun set over the neighborhood. The air felt lighter, full of possibility. One Sunday afternoon, I invited Emily and Brad to sit with me on the porch. "I want you both to know something," I said. "This house isn't just mine, it's yours too. But only as long as you respect it, and each other. I built this place with my own two hands, but it's the people inside that make it a home." They nodded, understanding in their eyes. "We know, Dad. We won't forget again." As I watched them walk back inside, arms around each other, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long, long time: pride. Not just in the home I'd built, but in the family I'd helped rebuild. There will always be challenges, money troubles, old wounds, new temptations. But I know now that we can weather them together, as long as we don't lose sight of what really matters. Respect, kindness, gratitude. And as the years go by, I hope Emily and Brad will remember the lessons we learned, that a home is built on more than wood and nails. It's built on forgiveness, second chances, and the courage to change. Sometimes it takes standing up for yourself to teach others how to stand on their own. Sometimes, letting go is the only way to hold on to the people you love. Now, when I sit on that old porch swing, coffee in hand, I look at my family through the window, laughing, arguing, making plans, and I'm filled with a quiet joy. I know my wife would be proud. I know, at last, that I did right by her, and by them. And if you're reading this, or just listening to an old man's ramblings, I hope you remember, it's never too late for a new beginning. It's never too late to bring gratitude back home.